I want you to just be attacking Void Wretches, and I want to play hard denial. It's not so much that I want to drop the nothing beast on you. It's that I want to take something for absolutely nothing.
Howdy, friends. We have a heck of an episode here for you today. This is going to be covering Tara out of Outcasts. Probably one of the more complicated masters out there. But when she's played right, she is really tough to beat. We are coming right off the heels of Nova, so I've got one of the people that has been running Tara for a long time, Owen, Beste, and we also have Cody, Hiatt, who actually won Nova using Tara 3 times out of 5 rounds. I think you're going to learn some very interesting ways to play it because they play her a little bit different, and you're going to actually find some interesting ways to counter her as well. So enjoy.
Playing a tabletop strategy game allows you to unplug and test your skills against friends. Every week, Third Floor Wars delivers useful strategies, discussions, battle reports, and reviews to tabletop games like Malifaux. If you want to get better at the games you already play, or discover the games other people are playing, you are in the right place. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk broadcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the Outcast Master Tara and how the Obliteration Crew works in Malifaux 3rd Edition. My guests are Owen, Beste, and Cody, Hiatt. Now, Owen, I think you and I have known each other for, 3-4 years now?
I think that's about right, Craig.
Yeah, well, welcome to the Third Floor, man. Now, for those of you that don't know Owen, he's a well-respected competitive player and is responsible for keeping Malifaux community alive in the Capital City Conference during the drought between 2nd and 3rd edition. He's been hosting games at his house on a regular basis. I even had an opportunity to go up and visit and see it in action. And Owen, your perseverance pushing through that drought and kind of keeping the game alive is pretty awesome. You might also know Owen from all the work he does with Nova. So he's part of the reason that Nova happens every year. And if you saw any of the tables from the Nova Grand Tournament there at the beginning of September, Owen, I think, was responsible for about half of them. So, Owen, I think the first thing I want to try to figure out is kind of what got you into tabletop gaming and how did you find Malifaux?
Thanks, Craig. Well, and thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure. So I really got into tabletop gaming in middle school with an early exposure to Warhammer 40,000 2nd edition. So way back when it came with a cardboard cutout dreadnought and all those very static pose Marines. But since I was in middle school, I didn't have a car, so made it kind of hard to go find people to play with since my folks didn't drive me to the store all the time. So it all went on the shelf or in the basement until after college, when a good friend of mine and I realized that we had both done the same thing as young kids. And so we said, well, let's figure out where the game's at. By then, I think it was 4th on the cusp of 5th. And so we got back into it, started playing, had a good time. And then we found out that, hey, lo and behold, in our backyard, there was a gaming convention for 40K. Called the Nova Open. So 8 years ago, I went out and as a player, tried it out, had a great time, and answered the call for volunteering. And in the time since then, we went through a couple edition changes in 40K, and then some friends started talking about this little game called Malifaux. So this is right around the time that 40K started turning into Death Stars and crazy flying demon lists. And it really wasn't very much fun.
No, it wasn't. And the rules seemed to change on a weekly basis. You just couldn't keep up.
Could not. And so when we were exposed to the beginning of 2nd edition Malifaux, it blew us away. It was huge. So Mike Brandt, who founded the Nova Open, started having game nights at his place, and all of us got super into it. I joined starting with Misaki. At the time, I wanted to go 10 Thunders, but none of the 10 Thunders models were really released at that time. So I switched into Outcasts, and that's where I've been ever since.
Yeah, I've only ever known you as an Outcast player. Is that pretty much all you've played?
Pretty much. I've dabbled a little bit in Asami, and recently I just got the Yoku box. So I put her together, started painting her, played one game, had a ton of fun. So I'm very much looking forward to 10 Thunders in 3rd edition.
Yeah, they're strong. They're strong. There's a lot of people arguing they weren't tested enough, but time will tell on that one. All right. So for some of you, you already know Cody. Cody was the Tara player on the live stream that we did against John Fox, which he won, by the way. And probably what he's most famous for now is being the first place finisher at the 2019 Nova GT for Malifaux. And you took Tara. I know you took Tara, Cody, in the 5th round. Did you take her 2 or 3 times total out of the 5 rounds?
I took her 3 times, round 1, 4, and 5. Yeah.
Nice. And Cody, nobody from the Carolina Conference was surprised to see Cody take first. He's been pretty much a dominant player down here in the Carolinas. So, Cody, welcome to the 3rd floor. Let's hear how you found Malifaux.
Thanks for having me, Craig. It's a pleasure to be here. Shout out to the floor heads or the 30s, whatever you call your fans.
Oh God, the floor heads.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
We might need to work on your branding skills, Cody.
Yeah. That's you. You're the brander. Yeah. So it's crazy. Owen and I have like super similar stories. When I was 11 years old, I went to like Camp Atari Boy Scout camp, and there was like some camp counselors playing 40K on a picnic table there. And
no kidding.
I was like obsessed with tabletop gaming. I was like a middle schooler, like you said. I had no money, no car. I begged my parents to buy me the Eldar Codex that I would read, like on road trips, cover to cover, but could never really play. Like scraped together a little bit of money in like middle school and high school. And then in grad school, I finally had a little bit of money to get into it. Got into 40K. I believe that was around 5th edition. And yeah, from there, I actually dabbled a little bit in Malifaux 1st edition, but that was just like playing on some dude's coffee table while you take breaks to smoke spice in Florida because it was wild and we could never get anyone else to play with us. And from there, I played War Machine a bunch and then moved up here to North Carolina, played Guild Ball a bunch, and finally found you guys here. I didn't even know you were playing on a different day at Atomic. So hopped in about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it's been good having you, Cody, and you also I think were a bit of the vanguard in, and I've talked about in the show before how we've had a nice little influx of Warhammer Horde players move over to Malifaux, and I think that you were really kind of the first to make that happen. And at some point, we keep talking about it, Cody. At some point, we need to get all those guys on so we can kind of talk about the similarities and why. Malifaux scratches an itch that apparently Warhammer Horde scratched for you as well.
Yeah, that would be an awesome combo because there's definitely so much overlap in just how the game functions and how what you want to see on the table and how you want to play out a game, but it scratches a different itch in terms of the skirmish and the individual model complexity.
Yeah, we've had a lot of that here in the DC region as well. A number of my regular players all came from the War Machine community. Actually, this weekend at Nova, one of the heads of the War Machine group, shout out to Devin, was actually over playing demo games of Malifaux and was really excited to be playing. So it's we definitely have a lot of crossover.
So it didn't just happen down here in the Carolinas; it happened up there as well.
That's correct.
Yeah. And, like I said, Cody and I have talked about it, and I Cody's insights on it was really interesting, as well as some of the other guys here in the Carolinas. And like I said, it hasn't happened yet, but at some point I'd like to do a refugee from Warhammer Horde podcast, I guess, and kind of talk about it. But that's not what we're here today to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about Tara and the Obliteration crew. And what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to kind of dig into your brains a little bit and learn how you guys, how you build an Obliteration crew, where you start, how the crew itself plays, how Tara plays, what are some of the key tech pieces that you pull, depending on what the strat is or maybe what the scheme pool is. And we're also going to go over how we can counter the Obliteration crew so that Tara's not winning every GT out there, Cody. So let's start off with you, Owen. Can you kind of give me an idea, like a quick overview of Tara? What makes her unique? What are some of her signature abilities?
Sure. So just like in second edition, Tara is all about control. She's about controlling the board and about burying models, both friendly and foe. And in third edition, it's that burying your own models that's really become a signature of her crew. She operates with the ability to control the battlefield through playing a shell game, in some ways similar to Colette, except that every model in her crew could do that. So she can bury and every other keyword obliteration model, with the exception of Talos, who we'll talk about. But all the other ones can be buried, and they can also hand out fast to enemy models, and then use that fast for fun and profit.
Yeah, and the first time you find out, like the first time I went against Tara, it was like, she's going to hand out fast. I'm like, sweet. But as I'm sure we're going to get into, it's not so sweet. In fact, it's probably one of the few times you're going to try to stop yourself from getting fast. So Cody, I mean, do you consider her a control master?
Yeah, definitely. Or more so, I don't know, this is just semantic at this point, but like a denial master.
Okay.
Like Owen said before, what's really signature about her in the new edition is the ability to bury your own models. And that is just it's so hard to describe when you just look at her card. But anytime an opponent wants to commit on something, wants to go in on any of your models, you can next activation spend a bonus action that's almost nothing to just bury it and say, no, you can't attack that model anymore. So I think that ability to deny your opponent's AP by both causing them to spend resources on a model that you're just going to bury, and causing them to take walk actions to get to models wherever you decide to unbury and bury, makes it a huge denial sort of gameplay strategy there.
Yeah, I think your shell game, it really kind of captures what it feels like when you play against her, because it just and it's it's so thematic too, which is really neat, and it's so unique, which is something that I've told Matt and Kyle that I just love about this new edition, is just how every keyword seems to have just a really neat flavor to it. And at Nova, and I faced a lot of stuff I'd never seen before, and even when I was up against the wall, it was just cool because everybody felt like their own thing. So I'm not saying third edition is perfect, and I'm not saying it's perfectly balanced. It's pretty good, but the one thing that I feel like they nailed is the feel. I think that each of these masters feel that way.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So Owen, we talked about I think Cody gave a great example of, that shell game. Any other main strengths that we should know about Tara, other than her ability to pretty much make sure she's got her models where she needs them to be, not where you want them to be, as the opponent, or her offensive ability to bury? Is there other things we should know about?
So she also brings to the table a lot of activation control. So with the advent of pass tokens, activation control is much less of a thing in this edition. However, between her ability to go twice individually and Aeonis's ability to automatically get 2 pass tokens every turn, is often going to be able to guarantee that she gets at least 1 or 2 activations after your opponent's crew has activated.
Yeah, and to kind of just build on what you just said, Owen, it's not that activation control isn't a thing anymore. It's still powerful. It's just a lot harder to get, right? Because of pass tokens.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's where Tara shines, especially when coupled with Aeonis. Cody, how about now Tara specifically? Does she put out any damage?
Yeah, she does. She has a pretty good sword, but I would like to get just like a little bit into the micro of these interactions, because we're talking about macro and her strength and everything. But looking around the internet, it seems like so many people are having trouble just getting this master on the table. So I thought it'd be good just to talk for a little bit about the micro interactions that make all of this denial and speed and low key damage actually pop up. So we already mentioned the fact that we can hand out fast with a bonus action. And it's the same action. It's an attack action that either makes the enemy fast or buries one of your models that has the ability to bury. And then all of your models have that can be buried have an ability that when they start their activation, they can remove fast from any model on the table to unbury base to base with them. So what that means is you can, wherever you can land your bonus action, you can have one of your other models come up base to base with that model. So it gives sort of unparamounted sort of speed and ability to board swap.
Yeah.
Now, and as a traditional sort of war game player, I'm always looking for a way to play denied flank, like in every single minis game I play. And Terra is exceptional at that because just the combination of those two abilities makes her so deep in your ability to put half your crew on one side, half your crew on the other side, walk up the table. Your opponent has no idea where you're going to commit to because at any point you can bury half of your crew, send it to the other side, or completely give up a flank or push really hard where you initially wanted to. And
so, Cody, there's a lot of people listening that understand what a denied flank is. But I think we also have a lot of new players. And don't spend an hour on it, but can you just give kind of briefly what a denied flank is and what dominating a flank means so that we can kind of get a feel of what you're talking about?
Yeah, denied flank basically means you want to fight in a position where, say, you have a 70% to 50% advantage in terms of the amount of your force versus their force. And you do that by putting something hard or difficult to control or difficult to pin down on one side, and then you put 80% of your strength on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're fighting up on one side and you're conceding the other side, but saying you're not going to get anything out of this conceit because you can't move anything, or in this position, or in this case, you could put all of your stuff into chasing down that one flank, but then I'm going to bury it and send it the other way anyway.
Yep. Okay, great. So now we kind of understand, literally the mechanics of it and why you're handing out fast, right? And that's to bring your unburied models out. And you said that her sword is pretty good as far as offensive. I am interested to hear about any other like micro mechanics.
Yeah, so I guess I should have answered your initial question. Her sword is good, and but it's mainly good because she gets 5 AP in a turn because she gets that first activation and then she gets the second activation, as Owen said. So any master that can swing 5 times is pretty good.
Yeah, and
she has a built-in Glimpse from the Void trigger, which is on a lot of. It's built into the Obliteration summons, and Nothing Beast and Scion have it that isn't built in. But that's the target 14 willpower door be buried. And when an enemy model is buried by Terra's effect, you get to pick where it comes up based off the unbury effect.
Yeah, and I can tell you, having faced that, target 14 drains your hand.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be taking that test at least 6 or more times per turn, probably more like 10. And so that actually is, I think, the other really vital side to the bury game is burying that enemy model does 3 key things for you. 1, it can neutralize an enemy threat. So if the enemy beater activates, moves towards your crew, and you're able to bury that model, it is now going to be out of position and not in a place where it can threaten you. This also works against models that have bad auras or things like Molly. If you can bury Molly, and guess what? Her last caress is not affecting you. So that's the first thing, is denying the enemy's threat. The second thing is, if it's buried, almost every model in this crew can attack buried models, which means your models can attack enemy models from safety with no chance of reprisal. And then the third thing is that because you get to choose where they unbury, you can put the enemy models in disadvantageous positions across the map to optimize your ability to threaten them and to minimize their ability to threaten you.
Which I think, Owen, ties right back into what Cody was talking about controlling a flank.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you're going to get started with Terra, I recommend read the rules for buried about 10 times because there's so many little nuanced things, and it's little tech that will win you certain games. So, for example, models that are buried at the end of the game are counted as killed. So you need to score that second point of Assassinate or Vendetta, sometimes all you have to do is bury them. If they're already activated, they're not going to unbury this turn. And also buried cancels replace effects. Replace effects state that you have to replace the model base to base with the original model. If it's buried, then it can't replace.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And that gets into some of the demise abilities that are out there.
Yep. Bury ashes and dust. He's a sad dude. And so when a model unburies, it's a place effect as well. So if you have enemy effects that have to do with places, then like what's the name of the aura where you can't place within 6 inches?
Lovely. Anna Lovelace has gravity.
Yeah.
Well.
So you actually can't unbury within 6 of her if she could see you, because it's specifically a place effect.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little nuance around buried that can help you when learning to play Terra.
So it sounds like positioning control, guys, is a big thing here, right? And you're kind of dictating not only where your models are going to be, but where the enemy's going to be, which really gives you a ton of control on the situation. And that itself, I would imagine, is you would consider a defensive ability, right? I mean, that's keeping her crew alive because you're dictating so much.
Yes, and a lot of her crew also has incorporeal, which just plays into that both defense and maneuver. Incorporeal lets you move through buildings or move through other obstacles. It also reduces damage by 1 to 0. So that helps keep your models alive and continues that theme of mobility and maneuver.
Yeah, and Terra herself is very defensive. I don't know if I was playing against Terra, I probably wouldn't take Assassinate into her because she has a defense trigger. If she's targeted with a projectile action and she gets her mask, so it's immediately as well. So if she has a mask, the action immediately fails. And if she's killed within 8 inches of Karina, she can discard a card to heal 4 and bury herself.
That's brutal.
And what's unique about that ability is it's not a demise effect because it's on Karina. So she's hard to kill if she's within 8 of Karina. She's hard to kill because any of her models can walk up, take a bonus action, and bury her. She's just a hard model to get down.
Yeah, that sounds like not a whole lot of fun, actually, to play against. So, all right, guys, what I want to do is I want to take a quick break. And when we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit more about the crew. We've talked about a few models, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into really how all these mechanics spread around the Obliteration crew and how Tara is out there really kind of, setting the pace and really supporting them. So we'll be right back. Now, I know a lot of you, actually play Tara, or maybe a lot of you have Tara sitting there and you haven't had the courage or the knowledge you felt to really get her on the table. But for those of you that are listening that have played against Tara, I think everything that was shared so far, you've experienced firsthand. The first time I saw it, it took me off guard because, I'm used to trying, I'm a big fan of the denied flank, the way that Cody talked about. I'm not nearly as effective at it as he is, but you have to say, okay, this is an aspect of this war game, this particular matchup. I'm not going to control where these matchups are going to happen. So I'm going to have to figure out an advantage somewhere else. But let's dive in. So you guys, you've looked at the pool, you've decided, hey, I'm going to, bring Tara, or if you're Cody, you're going to bring her 3 times into a GT, whatever, helps you out. And for most of us, there's probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 models that it doesn't even matter what the pool is. We're going to hire them. So, Cody, can we talk about what your core crew is, your auto hires?
Yeah. So with Terra, I'm almost always bringing Aeonis, and I'm almost always bringing the Nothing Beast. And from there on, it's sort of situational. I really like the Scion. The internet is kind of meh on the Scion, and Talos is kind of situational as well. But before I go into the strengths of why I bring the big guys and why the other ones are situational, I'd like to just briefly talk about what her turn 1 looks like. Because I think if we talk about what her turn 1 looks like, then everyone's going to understand how these pieces come together, because there's a lot, like I said before, this is a hard crew to get on the table because there's just so much text on the front of these cards that is so situational. If you look at Aeonis, I mean, he's got 5 abilities on the front. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 attack actions, and he's got so much going on that I think if we talk about some of the just the typical turn 1 and what it looks like, I think that'll paint a clear picture. So initially with Terra, what you're trying to do is you're trying to summon something, right? She's a summoner. That's what you want to do. So you're either going to summon the Void Hunter or the Void Wretch. I like to summon 2 Void Wretches because she can do that in 1 AP, and that gives me more positional ability because I'm bringing out 2 models that have that stutter time bonus action. And with the stutter time bonus action, all the other models in my crew are sort of passing around, burying each other. I specifically want the Nothing Beast buried because he's going to be the end of my turn 1 activation. So I'm going to move around. Terra's going to have a conservative first activation. She might bury the Nothing Beast. Karina will bury, the Scion. And eventually Aeonis is going to go, and he's going to unbury either my 2 Void Wretches or the Scion or something else that's buried. And in doing that, he has a built-in trigger to generate 2 pass tokens like Owen talked about before. So now, for those keeping track, you got 4 pass tokens, and you got Terra's second activation to go, and your opponent probably has 1 or 2 activations left.
So let's take a quick stop right here, though, Cody, because you touched on it, but can you talk about, like, mechanically how she summons? Because it's pretty unique.
Yeah, so with her summon, it's a once per turn ability, and she names any number of obliteration models. So for a Void Hunter, and she needs a tome. For a Void Hunter, you need 11 atomes. For 2 Void Wretches, you need 12 atomes. And they just come in buried. They're not slow. No other side effects. They just come in buried. And so to get them unburied, you're either going to need to stick that fast action, or you're going to need to have the Aeonis unbury them or Karina unbury them.
Gotcha. All right. So go back to where you were. So now you're activating Aeonis.
Yep. You've activated Aeonis. You generated 4 pass tokens. All of your models are barely outside of the deployment zone at this point. And at this point, if your opponent has not seen Terra before, they're like, my turn 1 strategy where I send Shenlong into their crew is not going to work because there's no models to attack. My turn 1 strategy where Mad Dog goes 20 inches and does 22 damage with his blast is not going to work because there's nothing to attack. So they just sort of putz around, and then after they're done activating, Terra goes with her second activation. She can leap somewhere, make something fast. You drop the Nothing Beast on them. Mm-hmm. He punches. He makes something else fast. Void Wretch pops up, or Scion pops up, buries the Nothing Beast with his bonus action. So you have made 2 Nothing Beast attack actions. Terra's maybe attacked something. The Void Wretch has attacked something. And your opponent has nothing to attack in return. Other than that,
so frustrating.
There's just a Void Wretch sitting in the middle of their crew, and there's nothing else for them to attack. And that's what a typical Terra turn 1 tends to look like, I think.
So out of curiosity, Owen, how different is that from how you approach turn 1?
So it's actually fairly different. And It was really interesting to hear Cody say that, because some of those maneuvers are something I'm definitely going to take to the table and try out. I've typically done a lot less of the bury my own models. The times that I've played Terra, I'll often summon, and I'll summon early just to get it out of the way if I have the right cards. I like to go for a Hunter if possible over the 2 Void Wretches. I usually like to bring 2 Void Wretches into the crew to start and then summon in the Hunters, because the Hunters are actually pretty dangerous and pretty scary. And I will try to move the whole team up the board and then start to shift if needed, or else focus on getting fast and getting that Hunter out and into combat.
Interesting. So where Cody is kind of going in there and Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of your goals, it's not the only one, is to get that Nothing Beast into somebody's face. It sounds like, and you're saying, okay, I'm really going to use the Hunter for that, at least turn 1 or 2.
Yeah, turn 1, and I mean, obviously it depends a lot on how aggressive your opponent's crew is and what the particular mission is. Like, can you play midfield, or do you need to play the enemy backfield? If it's enemy backfield, then yeah, absolutely. You can get a huge movement advantage by burying the Nothing Beast moving another model up, unburying the Nothing Beast from fast. So you could easily get 20 inches of free movement that way. But if it's a more midfield scheme, I often will like to move those models up behind terrain and almost be waiting for the start of turn 2 when I can charge through buildings, go late in the turn with my beaters who ignore the terrain and can come out and spring the trap on that enemy midfield.
Yeah, I'm so glad you have Owen on this episode because because there is so much discrepancy in how people are playing Terra when I look at how people are playing Terra online, and a lot of people are like, why would you ever summon the Void Wretch? And a lot of people are playing Terra exactly like Owen is talking about. But the reason I play her differently, just to sort of add a caveat to my position, is I'm looking at Terra as an Outcast player and not as a Terra player. And to explain that, I think that Owen's strategy is the best strategy in certain matchups and in certain pools. And in those matchups and pools, I just think that Jackdaw or Zip is better playing that kind of style. So when I bring Terra, it's for a specific purpose, and it's because I don't want you to do anything. Right? I want you to just be attacking Void Wretches, and I want to play hard denial. It's not so much that I want to drop the Nothing Beast on you. It's that I want to take something for absolutely nothing. I don't want to give you anything. That's why I'm bringing Terra in this particular matchup. So I'm so glad Owen's on here to sort of provide
the balance
context.
Well,
yeah.
And what I love too, and this isn't the first time I've come across this, is you not only have two people successfully playing a keyword, but playing it differently with really shockingly different approaches. Even though they might even bring a similar crew, they're attacking the board differently. And that gets into the depth and the intricacies of the game itself, I think.
When some of this too gets into where I like to go to for some of my out of keyword models. So to jump a little bit ahead there, I'm a huge fan of Marlena Webster. Now, part of that is that I'd say my favorite master overall is Leviticus, and she's amazing in a Leviticus crew. But in a Terra crew, her ability to tank damage off of your incorporeal models often means that your incorporeal models take no damage at all from min attacks. So, but that style only works if you have models like Talos, like Aeonis, like the Nothing Beast, who are more central and midfield oriented. If you're going to go instead with the kind of sudden strike and fade away type approach that Cody's talking about, that's going to suggest different out of keyword models.
Well,
and I don't
go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think either one is necessarily good or bad. It's really about trying to tailor your approach to the opponent's crew and the mission at hand. And I'm definitely going to be trying some of Cody's suggestions here.
Well, and here's the other thing I'll add to that, Owen, and I'll make an argument that's even more important. So there's no question that your approach and the crew you build is going to be dictated by your opponent and dictated by the pool. But I'll also argue it's really going to be dictated by your play style. And granted, for many of us, our play style dictates the faction and the crews that we play, period. But what I'm kind of getting a feel of here, and I'm really looking forward to us digging into it deeper, is it sounds like, Owen, you approach Tara with a different play style than Cody, and both of you can be equally as effective because familiarity is king. But I think the second thing is what's just something that fits your style.
Yeah, and I think one thing we're touching on with the playstyle thing is that we didn't sort of even mention in the beginning that we should have said is that Terra is an exceptionally deep master. Just the ability to bury your models and unbury your models in the complete opposite end of the board is so hard on your head. Yeah. Like I was completely mentally drained after playing her for 3 rounds in a row. And it's not that one of these approaches is better than the other. So you guys know that Magic the Gathering article, Who's the Beatdown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Cody, for those that don't, give us a quick.
So it's basically whenever you're playing Magic, so let's just make it Malifaux in this situation, you have one person who is the beatdown and one person who isn't. So the beatdown has the higher stats. If you just run at each other, the beatdown is going to win because they have better stats. They're just going to crush you, right? So one person is the beatdown, the other person is the control. Control doesn't have the higher stats, but they have sort of the tech, the situational abilities that can, debuff or sort of change the, where the battle should be taking place and maybe offer denial. So what that article is about is sometimes you can lose a game if you incorrectly assess which one you are. So if you think you're the beatdown, you were actually the control, you're going to lose. If you think you're the control, you were actually the beatdown, you're going to lose. So Owen's kind of talking about Terra beatdown, and I'm kind of talking about Terra control. So if I go into a matchup and I incorrectly assess that I am the control, when in actuality I needed to be running up the board, I needed to be dropping Aeonis in the middle of the board so that he can unbury a Void Hunter and the Nothing Beast, and I'm not trying to bury my own models. I'm just trying to make attack actions because I'm the actual beatdown in this matchup. That's the correct strategy. I haven't seen that too much. I think we'll get to that in the counters, I guess, of like what counters Terra denial, what counters Terra.
And what you're saying really rings a lot for me, Cody. Not only because I'm very familiar with that article, because I think it's an article that's universal to gaming, not just to Magic, but there's a lot of masters out there that I think this applies to. I think it applies to every matchup, right? So I do believe that there's a very universal truth in that article, but there's specific masters out there that this is really true. And obviously Tara is one of them, but another, for me, it's Molly. I mean, regardless of how I build my crew, I need to figure out very early if I'm going to be aggressive beatdown Molly or if I'm going to be control Molly, because my crew's probably not going to change. It's all going to depend on what I do with that crew and the decisions I make and how I approach the game. And to your point, Cody, and the point of the article, if I pick the wrong one and I think I'm going to be the beater, and it turns out that my opponent's the beater, I'm in a lot of trouble. And I can go through each of my ties and my one loss at Nova, and I could probably boil down to that misassessment. So I think that's a great call out.
And to that point on Molly specifically, the one game of Malifaux I was able to play at Nova, pickup game on Thursday, was actually Terra versus Molly. And in that scenario, I ended up playing more of the beatdown. I had taken Taylor in my crew as my out of keyword model. And so between Taylor and the Nothing Beast, they were able to put a world of hurt on a number of Molly's models. Yeah. And I was able to bury Molly and Archie. And then just wail on them with all of my attacks. And I had gone into that trying to go for the assassinate, which I almost got. We ended up drawing due to some poor flips and some tactical errors in the last turn. But it's an example of you need to evaluate at the start of the game which you are and adapt your strategy accordingly.
So, Owen, let's talk a little bit about your core crew. So we got to feel that, Cody's got 2 models that he pretty much brings in every time. Do you have 2 or 3 models that you always hire regardless of which direction you're going?
My core models are actually pretty similar to Cody's. So I take Aeonis and the Nothing Beast. Aeonis really for the unbury and the pass tokens. And that may seem like a lot for a 10-stone model, but having that guaranteed unbury is really vital. And another source of the Sever Timeline and the Stutter Time. So the other model, the Nothing Beast, is really your beater for the crew. Being incorporeal, attacking willpower is often really valuable, and then being terrifying to boot makes it a really key asset to the crew. Karina, who we haven't talked a ton about, is your automatic hire, your totem. She has a heal. A heal is actually incredibly valuable because any heal is going to go twice as far when you're healing an incorporeal model.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can think about every point healed is worth +1. She also has the ability to unbury models. She also has the coolest ability, I think, in the game, which is Time Warp, which allows you to swap your discard pile and your deck. It only comes into play once in a blue moon, but if the start of your turn is full of severe cards and you swap your deck and your discard, all of a sudden you can run back that same set of severe cards and you know exactly what's coming.
Wow. If that is not an ability that it's only going to impact maybe 1 out of 4 games, but it'll have a huge impact. I've never heard one before. That's very interesting.
Beyond that, it really depends on the mission. I like the Scion. The Scion is great against condition-based crews because the Scion has an ability where you do 2 damage to the target for every condition and then remove all of those conditions. So if you're going up against a crew that wants to stack friendly conditions like poison or burning, you can shut those down with the Scion. Talos is handy if you need a tank. At armor 2 and 7 wounds, terrifying 11, Talos can take a fair amount of punishment, especially if you can heal him with Karina. And he has a source of burying enemy models that is not a trigger. So you can guarantee a bury if you can guarantee a hit. So beyond that, it really depends on the mission.
Yeah, I just want to add to the discussion about the Scion as well. It started off, the Scion was more situational, but the more I've played Terra, the more she's became, I guess it's her, I guess it doesn't have a gender.
They is the word you're looking for.
They became more of an auto-include because it's just another source of stutter time. So when I'm playing Denial, when I'm playing Control, it's good to have that additional stutter time source. And specifically, it's good because I like to send the Scion off completely by itself because it has that built-in trigger on defense and willpower that Colette has. And we didn't mention, it's a henchman. So it reduces the damage it takes by 2 while resolving, and it can stone. So if I send that model off on its own, it's a 6-stone model. It's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If you want to send a big heavy beater at it, it's like, okay, well, you just wasted 3 walk actions coming at this model. I'm just going to bury. And if you don't go to do anything about it, then I can make something fast. And then all of a sudden you have Terra, Nothing Beast, Aeolus sitting right. Yeah, Talos is also super situational for me. If you're playing Beatdown, you got to bring Talos because at 8 stones, min 3 beater, he's pretty dope. In a lot of my games, he has just gotten absolutely shot off the board. 7 health is just fine. It's just fine. And I'm trying to get exceptional, man. I'm trying to win these games. And Karina. Oh, she's amazing. Karina's amazing.
You're with Owen on that she's just a great model. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's so good. I'm just adding that Karina's amazing. If you're playing against Terra, kill Karina as soon as possible. Otherwise, she's gonna. Not only are you going to waste AP attacking these models that are going to bury, she can heal buried models. So then she's just going to heal them up.
Yeah. So I assume, guys, that if you've got a lot of distance to cover, anybody in Tara's crew can make that a reality because maneuverability has a whole new meaning with this crew. But other than Void Wretches, which I think are the obvious one, who else is actually running schemes in an obliteration groups? Who's dropping scheme markers?
Terra herself, honestly. So obviously sending your master to do schemes isn't typically the optimal move. But if you think about it, she's a model with 5 AP who gets to go 2 different times, is potentially activating after everyone else goes. And she has an action to teleport 6 inches that she can do multiple times in a turn. So she has the ability to single-handedly score things like Breakthrough or Search the Ruins.
Harness the Ley Line. Just
run completely around the board, scoring you points. So, as Cody said, her sword is good. It's mostly good because she can use it 5 times. But often, she's a great choice for running your schemes.
Yeah, she's basically the best schemer in the game, quote unquote. I don't know, maybe. Like she's got 5 leaps she can do in a turn. It's insane. I would go so far as to say, as in certain pools and strats, if I have Terra and Aeonis on the board turn 5, you can't stop me from scoring 3 points, my 3 end of the game points. Right? Because I'm going to generate pass tokens, then Terra's going to go twice. She's going to drop a bomb, leap, plant a scheme, leap, pick up your bomb. You know, like she could do 3-point swings completely uncontested.
Right.
So it's so strong.
Yeah, you're a fan, Cody. I can tell.
Pretty good.
So, Owen, you talked a little bit about hiring out of keyword. Cody, I want to know if you've ever brought in out of keyword models into an obliteration crew.
Yeah, almost every time. I really like guns, just as an Outcast player, and so guns slide really great into a Terra crew. Like I said before, I cannot get Talos to work for the life of me. Every time I bring him, he is just the guy with the target on his head, right? So if I'm leaping all over the board and then I'm burying nothing beast, giving you nothing to attack but a void wretch, and then here comes Talos waddling up the middle of the board, it's like, oh, there's a thing to kill. He dies on turn 2 every time for me. So I really like Hans because he can be safe and he can contribute. I really like Parker as a second master, and I don't know if you want to talk about him now. Yeah, so Parker as a second master has... I mean, I could gush about Parker as a second master in most crews, but what he does unique in Terra is he's bringing out of activation interacts, his ability to, every time he does damage, discard a card and have a model and LOS interact. And that is just exceptional in Terra's crew because you can unbury a Void Wretch, have hit punch, make something fast, and then disengage. And then later in the turn, Parker can shoot and have that Void Wretch interact. Because the stipulation on not taking interacts after disengage is during activation. And it can still take an interact out in Parker's activation after disengage. That plus, Parker is the least greedy second master that I've played, at least. He has the built-in plus flips, and he can be stealing stones from your opponent. He needs no cards, which is very important in Terra's crew because her crew is so incredibly thirsty. They really need their hand.
Owen, have you ever hired Parker?
I have not hired Parker. I've typically shied away from the dual master. Part of that just on principle, part of that on an expectation that I suspect that's going to go away in Gaining Grounds next iteration. But it's definitely something I'd be interested in giving a try.
Just so the listeners know, at some point we're going to get Cody on to talk about Parker because don't get me wrong, guys. I've seen Cody's Tara, but I have yet to see somebody approach Parker the way Cody does. So we'll probably do a lot more on that as well. So we talked about some out of keyword stuff, and what I liked is we talked about why. How about Outcasts have a lot of really good versatile models. So, Owen, can you talk to me about some versatile models that you've spent time bringing into obliteration?
Sure. When I look at versatile models in Outcast, I'm typically looking at and this is generally not just Terra, I'm typically looking at Hans and Midnight Stalker and the Emissary. So the Midnight Stalker goes along with the same kind of teleport and scheme approach as Terra. So because of that, I often feel like that role is already taken. But if I need to double down on that approach, he could sometimes be good. More likely, I'm going to go with Hans, because Hans brings that crucial ruthless to the game. Hans also has the ability to shoot at models that are engaged. So if you're engaging enemy models to do a scheme like hold up their forces, or just because you've engaged them, Hans can help put out that extra little bit of damage. It's going to take you over the top. And then finally, the Emissary. I really like the Emissary in general in Outcasts. I'm slightly less likely to take it into the Terra crew because there's already a number of expensive models, but giving things like the pretty floral bonnet, which gives Don't Mind Me, to some of those models that can run up the board can be helpful for dig graves or detonate charges. And giving out the regen can help keep models like Talos or the Nothing Beast alive.
How about you, Cody? You already mentioned that you like Hans, but you also mentioned you like guns. Is there any non-gun holding versatile models you enjoy?
So you can't talk about Outcasts without talking about Prospectors. So the Prospectors are amazing. They have the ability to gain stun at the beginning of their activation and get a soul stone. No surprises that Terra, the summoner, would want all the stones she can get. And I think this is important to mention because we'll probably come back to it. So Terra is incredibly thirsty in her stones, in her cards, because she's a summoner, right? And so she's going to need at least 5 stones for their summons. She's probably going to need 3 stones for, drawing 2 extra cards and discarding at the beginning of the turn, 3 to 4. And then she's going to want some stones to probably keep her and Aeonis alive. So she's looking at needing like 10 stones, quote unquote needing. So prospectors are really good in that situation. You could bring 1 or 2. I usually like 1 because I like a little more threat with the rest of the points. The other out of keyword, the versatile models I like. So another thing you have to talk about with Outcast, I feel like, is the 2 sort of darlings of the faction right now, at least as the internet would see them, which is Pride and the Emissary. Owen touched on the Emissary a bit. I'll talk a bit about Pride. Pride is an exceptional sort of out of keyword model. He's only 7 stones, and he has a cheat second aura within 6 inches. So that's any of your friendly models within 6 inches can cheat second.
Yep.
If you played against Lynch in second, you know how incredibly powerful that is. And it's exceptionally powerful in Terra combined with Talos. So, because Talos is the only guy who has an automatic berry on his attack. So if you walk into some mess with Talos and you hit that automatic berry, now Pride can put up his cheat second aura, and all of your models don't even need to leave the deployment zone. They're punching the thing that's buried, and they're cheating second. So that's really good. The Emissary, I'm going to have a confession here, guys. I think the Emissary is kind of not great. I don't like very much.
Ooh, I don't know.
It's hard to say. I'm glad that's a safe space that I could confess to you guys. I really don't like the Emissary. I've tried it so much. I think he's good. I know. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get hate mail on this. I'm gonna get that threat. I think he's good in Leviticus for like dig and like good at keep making Mad Dog the best Mad Dog ever, but he just does like 6 stones worth of work, and he's 10, and the auras are fine. He's just kind of meh for me. Like, I don't know. I don't like him very much, but the internet loves him so much. Oh, he's the darling of Outcast.
Well, yeah, and here's something. This, Cody, I think you and I have talked about this before. And you came from Guild Ball, and so did I. So my bridge to Malifaux from 40K was Guild Ball. Yeah, and I've said this a couple times on the show. Guild Ball is a really, really good game. The rule set is tight. They've done a great job keeping things balanced. It's a straightforward game. The reason I left Guild Ball for Malifaux, though, is in Guild Ball, there are right answers. So if Cody, you and I are sitting down there, we're watching a live stream of 2 guys playing Guild Ball. And I see, so-and-so activate, Ox, and he goes in with Ox and he chooses this, makes this choice on the, what were those called? What were the different columns?
Yeah, the playbook, right?
The playbook, right? So he would choose this on the playbook and stuff like that. And I would say, Cody, I wouldn't have activated Ox. And you said, well, no, I would have activated. And you and I could discuss it to the point till we got to the right answer. Because I think Guild Ball can be solved. Whereas Malifaux, I think that the Emissary can suck and be great at the same time. Yeah. With 2 different players.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to talk too much crap about Guild Ball, but yeah, I definitely agree that
dude. I love Guild Ball. Don't misinterpret. It's not
definitely solvable when I was playing it a bunch. At least I felt to the point where, I mean, Guild Ball is a great game for practicing, but if you want a wild and wacky experience every time you play against your buddy and you played him 50 times in a row, I think Malifaux can be beat.
How about you, Owen? Have you ever had exposure either to Guild Ball or a game not quite as deep as Foe?
I've never played Guild Ball. So at my miniatures gaming has been pretty much confined to Malifaux and 40K. And 40K in some editions at some times was a more solved game, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, my issue with 40K and I don't want to turn this. I already said this is not going to be a Guild Ball bashing because I'm a fan of Guild Ball, and I'll go as far as to say the only game that I like more than Guild Ball is Malifaux. Because Guild Ball's a good game. I have to restrain myself not to bash 40K. One of the things that frustrated me, let's put it this way, one of the things that frustrated me in 40K was I really didn't like the fact that a lot of times the game ended before it started, where I presented my list, the opponent presented their list, and we pretty much knew exactly what was going to happen. I don't know if you experienced that as well, Owen.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in some of the latter stages of 5th and the early part of 6th. I hear it's better now, maybe. I don't know.
I've got buddies that play it and love it. And I don't fault anybody for loving it because the one thing that 40K's got is A, unbelievable models. B, it's got such a rich lore history. I mean, there's so much flavor when you play it. And if you're the kind of guy that really hates money, it is the game for you to play. I mean, that's your go-to.
Yeah.
And again, we want to get back to Tara here, but I think this is interesting. Cody, how about so we talked about 40K versus Malifaux. We talked about Guild Ball versus Malifaux. And again, we want to do a whole podcast on this later, but talk about to me like in the same context where Warm Hordes fits relative to Malifaux.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I would have some reservations about bashing Guild Ball. I do not have the same reservations about bashing 40K. You know, if you want like 50 stories about why, my models fleeing off the table turn 1 was terrible, yeah, you could get some of those. But to wind it back to Malifaux and I guess War Machine. So yeah, War Machine is similar to Guild Ball in that I think the most important element that decides the game is matchup knowledge. Not dice. Yeah. I know how you Malifaux players love to talk about dice and how it's so bad, but I think more than dice, it's matchup knowledge. Now, War Machine is great because it's almost impossible to get 100% matchup knowledge because there's so many matchups and it's you have to practice them so much. It's a game where you have to play so many times a week to really stay top of your game. And to pull it back to Malifaux, I think the game is so new, like you said, and I can't wait to see how wrong we are in a year. Like right now, I think Tara is either S tier master or I'm just tricking all these fools and they're going to realize in a year and she's going to be trash. Not to that extent. And on the emissary, I think it's meh. And I've seen some other people do crazy stuff with it and I've had some good games with it. I'm just saying that I would, I could be a charter member of the emissary as meh church. And we're looking for bishops right now. So if you've been silent and want to finally speak up, have your piece heard.
But not bishop, because he's not good.
Yeah, it's to your point, Cody. We're wicked early, right, to start making the call on any model, let alone any keyword. And you've heard me say it on the show before, where the first time you go up against any keyword for the first time, it just seems like the most OP. I can't believe how much. I can't believe this. And then you play it against it the second time, you're like, okay, this is not as bad as I thought it was. But yeah, we've got a lot to figure out. And stuff that's dominating here 3 months into release. I tell you right now, is not going to be dominating 8 months after release, let alone 12 months. So I think that's a really good point to bring up. One last thing when we're talking about creating these crews, guys, just in general, as far as core crews, I do want to talk a little bit about Outcast upgrades. So Owen, are there any of the Outcast upgrades that you're finding yourself bringing in?
Honestly, I don't. And that may be the wrong answer. I feel like there probably should be scenarios where I want to be bringing those. I'm interested in the terrifying upgrade, but as of yet, I haven't found a ton of scenarios where I'd rather spend 2 stones versus have 2 stones to spend on models.
I've struggled with it, Owen, because I played probably my first 10 games of 3 not bringing in an upgrade. And I think it was kind of my 2E hangover. It was like 2 stones are brutal. And what was really hard for me was to bring an upgrade on a non-minion. Because I was like, I'm paying 2 stones to bring it in on a hencher or an enforcer, and I'm getting half the value. Or I can bring it on a minion and get the full value, and he's dead turn 2. Like, I didn't hire him. I'm kind of in the figuring it out stage now with upgrades. Like, I would say I'm probably bringing in an upgrade once a game now.
I think
you have to play it, I think, right?
I think it depends a lot on faction too, because, for example, Arcanists have, I don't recall the name.
Don't get me started, please, Owen. Please don't get me started.
But
go ahead.
I mean, having Arcane Reservoir on an upgrade and having an upgrade that lets you use Soul Stones and putting that on the Steam Arachnid, like, there's some definite combos. And certainly for a couple of the other factions, there's some very, I don't want to say obvious, like it's a negative thing, but like there are some clear, powerful combos of particular models and particular upgrades. In Outcasts, I haven't found them yet. So I don't know, Cody, have you had any good luck?
No, I think Outcast upgrades are gotta be worst out of any of the factions. They're bad. They're not good. Like, Servant is good, but like you said, is it? I mean, I don't know. And then the hard to kill upgrade is living only, so that really limits the ability. And Wanted Criminal is just hot garbage. And especially in a Terra crew, because -2 stones effectively means -4 Void Wretches. Like, no,
yeah,
I'm
not good.
Yeah, it sounds like your stones are tight into hiring.
Yep.
They are. And I think that's why it's like, just briefly to go back to the Emissary, I don't think the Emissary is a great choice in Terra. In Cody's case, because he hates the Emissary. In my case, because, I think the 10 stones is better spent on keyword models and your cash.
Yeah, and we're still early into 3, but I got to tell you, I built 5 crews going into Nova, one for each round, and every time it was hard, and I like that. I like it because at the end of 2, it wasn't hard for me to build crews, and maybe by the end of 3, it won't be. Maybe a year from now, it'll be easy for me to spend my 50 stones. But right now, I like the fact that every time I wish I had 60 because there's not obvious choices.
I think it's especially hard in Outcast with prospectors, because I think a lot of people are using upgrades to round out weird soulstone caches. Like, if your master is not super stone thirsty and you have an 8 stone cache, you're like, oh, well, I'll just add an upgrade. So now it's more reasonable.
Yeah.
With us, we have prospectors. So it's like, we'll just turn that thing into a prospector. I'll rock a 2 stone cache and it'll be, effectively 6 or 7.
Yep. Yeah, that changes things. Unfortunately, not everybody has access to that, except for Arcanists, because those guys, prospectors are fine. Soulstone miners they're a problem. And I've talked about it a few times. And people that think that I'm kidding, I'm not kidding. So, all right, guys, let's take a quick break. When we get back from the break, I want to expand beyond the core crew. I want to talk a little bit about really how Owen and Cody approach a pool, how they look at Tara, based off of the strategies. What strategies do they look to Tara to solve? And then what are some of the schemes that they really think Tara excels in, and which ones does she counter? So we'll be right back. Howdy friends, Craig here. With 3rd edition Malifaux released, it's time for you to get a new mat with new deployment zones. We've tried every mat in the business, and nobody has better quality and selection than Mats by Mars. They're waterproof and they roll and unroll easily, and they're even wet erase Marco compatible. They offer over 35 designs and let you add M3EO overlays for making deployment and positioning a breeze. Check them out at matsbymars.com. They are offering a sweet discount for our listeners. After you found the perfect mat, use the promo code 3rd floor to get 10% off your entire order. If you really want to support us, in the notes of your order, request that our logo be put in the corner of your mat. It's the only way to make the best mat in the business even cooler. Again, that's Mat by Mars. Use the promo code 3rd floor to get a 10% discount. Details are in the show notes. So it's my favorite when I have two people on the show and, 80% of their approach to a keyword and a master are the same, but the other 20% is pretty contentious. And it gets into what I think is, something I mentioned, which is how important play styles are. Originally we were just going to do this with Cody, but I got talking with Owen at Nova and just before Nova, and Owen's a good player. I've played him, and I knew that Owen wouldn't approach this the same way Cody did. So I think having these perspectives are good. So Cody, let's talk a little bit about the strategy and scheme pools. You had 5 rounds in Nova. You ended up picking Tara 3 times. I'd like to know, were there certain strategies that you think Tara is my first or second choice out of all of Outcast?
Yeah, basically I'll play Tara into anything not reckoning, but the 2 strats I like the most, I used to think plant was her best strat, and now I'm really thinking that turf war is her best strat. The reason I really like turf war for Tara is because the turf markers are impassable. Yeah. So the bombs and the corrupted idol markers are not impassable, and Tara's biggest strength is the ability to go anywhere on the board. Well, that ability to go anywhere on the board is mitigated if your opponent can just stack the idols or the bombs in certain places and just stand on top of them. Well, then you got to fish for those 14 willpower duels to get to bury them so that you can interact with the strat. In Turf War, you can just interact all day. As long as they don't have 2-inch melee, you can just pop on the other side of the turf marker and press the button, flip it over. So I think Turf is where I'm really liking her right now. It's a close second with Plant. And especially if you can get corner or flank deployment, her corner and flank plant is exceptional.
So I'm curious, and maybe this is stealing the thunder of a future show a little, but so the one turf war round at Nova, you actually took Parker instead of Tara. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I actually took Levy, and it was mainly because it was in standard deployment is the first reason I'll say. I really like Tara in corner and flank. And I'll explain the reason for that, maybe because some of your newer players may not understand the difference in terms of the space that's available. So say with the schemes and strat pools that are available, there is 6 to 8 inches on either side of the center line that, let's just say it's the scoring space. That's where almost everything happens. And plant,
that's the hot spot.
That's the hot spot. And if you're in corner and flank, there's more hot spot, right? Because there's less wasted space in deployment. Tara loves that because Tara's main strategy is to force you to take walk actions to catch up with her, right? She's flipping and flopping all over the place. You're taking walk actions. So if it's a corner and flank, you have to take more walk actions. So I'll say that's the first reason why I didn't play her in turf. The second reason is so that round 3 pool is the only one I practiced for Nova, and I practiced it about 4 times. It's wild and wacky because you can either spend the entire game interacting or spend the entire game not interacting at all, because there are 3 scheme marker schemes and 2 leader-based schemes. So you have deliver and assassinate. So it seemed like every game played out. One or both people were trying to either just interact and not play the game, or people were just trying to kill a master and deliver a message and not play the game, not play the interact half of the thing. So that's why I would say I played Levy in that game and just tabled my opponent and went for the not interact part of that game.
And just for those listeners who weren't following the Nova missions, that was round 3 was Turf War on Wedge deployment with detonate charges, harness the ley line, power ritual, assassinate, and deliver a message. And I'm glad to hear that you called that a wacky one, because I made it that way on purpose.
Yeah, that was very wacky.
And I'm going to blow a little bit of smoke here, Owen, because Casey made it clear to me that you were responsible for about 80 to 90% of those pools. And there's a fine line, right? So you have a whole spectrum on when I win a pool. And I'll play a random pool all day long. I much prefer curated pools. Every one of those pools, Owen, I looked at it and went, God damn it. And if it's not obvious to me when I look at a pool what I should do or what my opponent's going to do, that's a good pool. And Cody, help me out here. Which pool was it? It was a corner pool that had outflank and power ritual.
5.
It's round 5.
Yep.
Oh, round 5. That was on the brink of being a terrible pool. Right, yeah. Because you had schemes that were forcing us to the corners because it was corner deployment, and then you had claim jump just sitting there like a sore thumb.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So as a player, you're going into it going, it's a good chance that all the fighting is going to be on the left or the right here, and I could probably get away with claim jump, which isn't easy normally. And had you taken that same pool, Owen, and put it in standard, I would have told you it's a bad pool. Because in standard, I would have thought it was too stacked. It was just terrible. There wasn't any decisions to be made. But on corner, it was great. So for those of you that didn't get access to the pools, what I'll do is I'll figure out how to get a link to them in the notes. I think that you guys would have a lot of fun out there in your next Tuesday night match with your buddy, playing some of those pools that Owen built, because and Cody, you can back me up on this. They were really good.
Yeah, in both of those rounds, my opponents and I picked the exact same scheme. So they were both pools where it's just like, I guess I'm gonna do this. Let's see if we can.
Yeah, and the game's interesting if you both went the same way.
Yep.
Or if you both went different ways. It was interesting either way. So hats off to you on those pools, man.
Well, thanks. And to take it back to Nova again, and again, we'll just harp on it because it just happened. But for Terra specifically, Terra was played 6 times at Nova. 3 of those were Cody. But all 6 of those happened in the same pools. So
wow.
she appeared twice in round 1, which was plant explosives on standard. She appeared twice in round 4, which was standard corrupted idols, and twice in round 5, which was the corner plant explosives. And that, to me, dovetails nicely with where I see her as strongest, and that's in plant explosives and corrupted idols.
Oh, so let's talk about corrupted idols, because I think we got a nice breakdown on plant explosives, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, but I really want to hear your thoughts on corrupted idols.
So a couple things. So one, summoner. Summoners are good into corrupted idols because you can add models to the game who can then spend their wounds to push things. The second reason I think she's strong in corrupted idols is the ability to move your own models around in the shell game. And then the third reason is that if you are able to out-activate your opponent and save those pass tokens, so if you summon at the beginning and then get 2 pass tokens, you're going to be up 1 on your opponent in terms of the initiative flip, which can help you guarantee that idol comes in at the place where you need it to be to do the best job.
Is he right or wrong, Cody?
No, I completely agree. Like I said, I'll play a Terra in anything not Reckoning. And the one caveat I'll add on Corrupted, now, I think they're all close. I think Turf War, now this is an evolving opinion based on Nova as well. So I think Turf War is slightly top, then Plant, and Corrupted is just slightly below. And the reason because is even though saving those pass tokens is very good for putting the idol exactly where you want, I often found in my Corrupted Idols games that I didn't have the card to ensure I put it where I wanted, because I'm often stoning for cards, and Tara is so thirsty. She needs a severe to summon. I need a severe to summon 2 wretches. I need probably 2 to 3 moderates to ensure my stutter times go off. I need a card to discard for Karina so that she can unbury. That's 4 cards right there. I usually have 1 severe that I could spend on Nothing Beast sticking an attack, or 1 severe that I'll have to spend on Tara sticking her bonus action to make something fast so that I can unbury like 2 to 3 models post that point, because I can't risk it. So I usually have, and we'll get to this how to beat Tara, I usually have like 1 card that's in flux that I could spend on something. And maybe it's a 7, maybe it's a 13, maybe I drew what I needed. So spending that 13 on putting the idol exactly where I want it when I could be anywhere is like,
right.
It's strong, but it doesn't make it like, it's not where I auto go to Tara because of that ability, right?
Yeah, but I can see where Owen's coming from, because he mentioned the pass tokens, right? But really, I mean, all you guys keep talking about is Tara can put her stuff wherever she needs them to be, and that's Corrupted Idols, right? So you let Joe Schmo opponent cheat his 13 to make sure he puts the idol where he wants it, because you're like, I don't care. You can do it on the center, on the corners, or whatever. I'll bring 80% of my crew there anyway. So I can see where that happens. But here's the question that hasn't been asked but has been hinted at. Neither of you like her in Reckoning. Owen, what's the liability there? Or is there just a better Outcast master?
For me, Outcast is a faction that's full of damage dealing models and masters. Yeah. And Tara can do damage, but if your goal is just pure damage output, you have a lot better choices in Outcast.
Gotcha.
She also, with her weak summons, is a liability into that, because they're easy to kill and you can give up those points.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you add up the amount of points she's bringing to a Reckoning match in terms of Reckoning points, she's bringing Ionis worth 2. She's bringing Tara herself worth 3. The Scion might be worth 2. And then all the summons, she's probably sitting around 13, 14 Reckoning points. And we have Leviticus in the same faction who can bring 9, and all of them are denies of, like, he's the most busted crew in Reckoning. So, and then all of our other crews are great in Reckoning.
Yeah, and again, remember, I'm not good at this game, but I'm just learning to stop bringing henchmen to Reckoning games. And it sounds really stupid that I just figured that out, but like, it's a big deal, because everybody's going to score 2 points into Reckoning. It's who scores the 3rd or maybe 4th point that's going to determine, who wins the strat.
Yeah, against Tara, you can actually score the 4th point without tabling the crew. Most Reckoning crews I see, it's like almost impossible to score 4th point without tabling.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. So, Owen, is there 2-3 schemes that you see in a pool that you just make you immediately reach for Tara?
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite scheme for her is Hold Up Their Forces. And that is pretty easy to score, considering you have things like Void Wretches that are 4 points. If you go late in the turn and get fast on models who've already activated, you can pretty much guarantee you can score the 1st point. And as long as you're not killing the enemy crew, which you probably won't be, you can usually guarantee the 2nd as well. Looking beyond Hold Up Their Forces, like Outflank, it supports mobility. You don't have to do anything except be there, which is good for summoned models. And then I like Search the Ruins a lot, because you often can get a few models through the enemy crew and into their backfield, dropping markers by terrain, and being incorporeal and having Tara's teleport can let her help do that in a pinch.
And you got to be really careful with Search the Ruins, because Search the Ruins is relatively easy to drop markers to score, but it's because generally those markers end up being clumped together within 4 inches or so of each other, which also makes it really easy for your opponent to break. It sounds to me like with Tara that I could have my 3 search markers, 10 inches away.
Sure.
And that's really hard for another crew to break.
And I know, Cody, you had mentioned before the show that you really like Take Prisoner with Terra. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Take Prisoner is pretty decent with Terra. It's like I think it's probably like in the top third of schemes I would take with her, just because you can force your opponent. You play little mind games with them in terms of luring them around the board in order to score it. Also, Talos can just auto hit the berry, and then Aeonis can unbury that enemy model once it's buried using his severed timeline action. And then you can score it that way. I'll definitely echo Hold Up Their Forces as being, she's probably the best Hold Up Their Forces master in the game, with the 4-stone significant. And unlike other summoners that are summoning small, like little weenies, she can just keep them buried until they're going to score the points after you've activated all of your models. The other scheme I'll talk about is Vendetta, that I think Hold Up and Vendetta were in like 2 or 3 of my 8 games at Nova, and I took them every time. Vendetta with the Scion is incredibly easy to both score the first point and the second point, because it draws LOS through obliteration minions while it's buried, and it has that Colette defensive action to basically stay buried as long as you want it to be. So all you got to do is whip up a Void Wretch, send it along, and then have the Scion punch through it to score your first Vendetta point, and then they sit buried until the end of the game, and then score your second point.
When you say punch through it, Cody, what do you mean?
So the Scion could take actions while buried, and while buried, it may target buried models, just like the other models in the crew. And LOS for its actions, it can draw a range for LOS. Sorry, let me just read you can draw a range in LOS for its actions from friendly obliteration minions. So that's the Void Wretches and the Void Hunter. It can use them as sort of the same way Rasputina uses her pillars to be targeting beacons for its actions.
So what that ends up giving you, Cody, is it gives you a lot of flexibility to make sure that, what was challenging with Vendetta is that I have to not only make sure my piece is in the right place at the right time, but I have to really make sure that your piece is at the right place at the right time. And the Vendetta first point, relatively easy in 4 turns. Yeah. That second point is tough, man, because if you declare Vendetta too early, all they have to do is kill that model, and they've denied you a point. If you do it too late, you may not have time to finish the job, and you can't do both in the same turn. I can't score the first point and kill you and score the second point in the same turn. It's a tougher scheme than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, I think it's really tough in third, and that's why you need a model like Scion who can just be like, I will not die this game, in order to guarantee you can get that second point. Otherwise, it's not even worth the convoluted strings you have to pull to score the first point.
So, guys, we had a question sent in by one of our listeners. Actually, is Damien here from the Carolina Conference. So, Damien has a question about schemes, and Owen, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are.
Hey guys, Damien from North Carolina here. Just had a quick question about Terra. Just wanted to know if you're playing against Terra, are there certain schemes that you see that you don't want to take facing Terra that make things difficult? Recently had my first game playing against Terra the other day, and I noticed I took Breakthrough, which is really frustrating for me because my opponent kept burying my models and unburying them on my models that were trying to do Breakthrough, which left them really far out of the fight, and it was super obnoxious. So just want to see if there's anything else that maybe I should avoid playing against Terra as well. Thanks a lot.
I think it really depends on how mobile your crew can be. She definitely has the ability to deny it. I'd say ones that are especially rough against Terra are Claim Jump, because that model that's going to go in the middle, most likely you're going to be able to put a model next to it or even bury that model so it can never get anywhere near the middle. So I'd say Claim Jump is one of the worst against Terra. Assassinate is kind of hit or miss. You have the ability to bury Terra and get her out of harm's way. as long as you aren't too aggressive with how you position her. So that can be tough to score against her. I would say for me, those are the ones that immediately come to mind. But I don't know, Cody, do you have any others you really like denying?
Yeah, claim jump. You're spot on with claim jump, because if I get even a little bit of a whiff of it, I'm going to run a Void Wretch to the middle of the board every single turn. After you've already activated, you're never going to score it. I would also not do anything that makes you name a model on any of the obliteration models. So I wouldn't do Take Prisoner on the Nothing Beast, for example. Your opponent is you're just going to have to luck into that, which is not a good way to win games. Same with, Vendetta or, on any of the obliteration things. You need to know what in the Terra crew does not have the ability to be buried. So that's Talos, and that's any of their sort of out of keyword things. So they probably brought some. They probably brought a Prospector. So Prospector is a good thing for Take Prisoner or Vendetta if you have to pick that. And I can understand why Damien is saying Breakthrough is hard, because there's probably a Prospector sitting in the deployment zone the entire time, just waiting for one of those scheme markers to dig up. So sorry, Arcanist players. Sorry, your one soulstone miner wins this game. Sorry, just pick something different next time, I guess. I don't know.
So that's actually a really good segue into, beyond just the mission, thinking about matchups that Terra is good into. And you mentioned Soulstone miners. Her crew just wrecks enemy crews that depend on burying their own models. So Soulstone miners, Colette, other models with fade away like Agent 46, 7. Yeah, Agent 46. So any crews that rely on burying their own models defensively, you can put a world of hurt on them. I've also found she's good versus slow crews, because if you can put them out of position with a bury-unbury effect, it can make it really difficult for them to get back into position where they need to be.
So, and that covers Outcast or Arcanist, right? So Arcanist makes you say, okay, every Arcanist player is going to bring 2 Soulstone miners. So I know that Tara is good into that. Is there other factions that fit those other categories you're talking about? So, we declare factions first, and I'd be interested to know if there's a faction that your opponent would declare that would make Tara a better choice for you.
So I will admit, I have not played against a ton of Bayou and Rezzers. In general, there are a lot of slower Rezzers models, but I know there are also some fast ones. So it might depend on knowing what your opponent is likely to bring based on either the mission or their preferences. For me, it's more which faction you want to avoid, and for me, that's Guild. Guild has a lot of ways. Guild has a lot of ways to attack your buried models, which is basically turning the tables on your key strength. So that can be a risky maneuver, because they can even just tech into pieces that can attack your buried models.
How about you, Cody? How does the declared faction of your opponent impact whether you take Tara or not?
Like Owen said, I just don't play Terra into Guild. The Jury is just too strong. As soon as the Jury activates, she deals 2 damage to the Void Wretches, or does 2 damage to models that are buried, and 1 damage to model with summoning upgrades. So as soon as she activates, or I might have those backwards. Either way, she does 3 damage to the Void Wretches, and that's not an attack action, so it goes through incorporeal. So they just slide in the Jury, and I'm not looking to play that sort of mini game where maybe I could bring less of my obliteration models and you'll be wasting points on the Jury, because it's not that big of a waste. So I'm just not going to play Terra into Guild, at least for now. I'm sure if someone wants to practice that mini game with their buddy who plays Guild, that they could probably figure out a way to bring Terra, but only bring those out of keyword models we were talking about, so that the tech gets sort of lessened. In terms of other factions, I haven't ran into anything that's going to make me not. So there's counter picks, and then there's hard counters, right? Counter picks is things I don't want to see, and then hard counters are going to make me not drop it into the entire faction. Jury is that hard counter. Yoko, I don't like, in 10 Thunders, because she's generating a bunch of pass tokens and she's putting you on negatives. And
card pressure.
Yeah, Terra does not like negatives because we don't want to be spending an AP that we could be punching with to concentrate just so that we could stick our bonus action to make you fast. That's a super inefficient use of AP. But it's not so bad that I wouldn't drop Terra into 10 Thunders.
Got it. But that's who you'd be afraid of, right? So you might still bring out Tara when they declare 10 Thunders, and you'll kind of hope that they don't bring that. It's kind of like when they declare Bayou, and I'm like, I really like McMorning into this, and I hope they don't bring Brewery.
It's not like second edition where a lot of people had tech picks into Terra. Terra gets the better end of every buried interaction except for the jury and the Death Marshal recruiter in Guild. So I could punch Misaki, she can't punch back. I could punch the Dreamer summons, he can't punch back. So she gets the better end of all of those interactions.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense. So, guys, we're going to take one more break. And when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about maybe some secrets that people are going to discover about Tara after playing her a lot of times. So we're going to talk a little bit about that second level play. And we've hinted at some counters for the Obliteration crew. And I want to dig into that too a little bit more. So we'll be right back. Howdy folks, Craig here. Now if you love gadgets as much as we do, you're going to love the new Third Floor Wars Gadget Bundle from Schooner Labs. Branded with the logo of your favorite podcast, it comes with 2 measuring multi-tools, a compass stepper for those tight and important movements, along with a compact dashboard to track your turn, strat, and scheme scoring along with your soul stones and pass tokens. It is the perfect bundle for anyone who plays Malifaux or just wants to look cool while doing it. The link is in the show notes. Check them out and help support your favorite gaming podcast. So I think one of the jokes I've seen a few times is playing Tara is a little bit like playing 3D chess. And I think that anybody who's been listening has kind of really figure that out, because not only are some of the interactions very unique, which makes her, somebody who needs to be practiced, but I think that she has a lot of options. And I think one of the things that people are figuring out in 3 right now is that the more options you have are great, right? It makes you more flexible. You can be reactive, but it also gives you more opportunities to make mistakes. So I do see why, Tara may not be as straightforward as playing Lady Justice, for example. But Cody, I want to talk a little bit about kind of something you discovered about the Obliteration crew after you got 5 or 10 games in. So, obviously the first time you put Tara down in 3rd edition, you had all the cards out there in front of you. You had a pretty good idea what she was going to do. You kind of went and stuff like that. But what didn't happen until later on that you scratched below the surface and got more into the core of the crew? What are some interesting things people are going to figure out?
Oh man. So like we said before, Tara is exceptionally deep. Just the ability, if you just sit down at your next game week and you only think about, 3 abilities on each card, you're still going to have a headache just in the burying and unburying mechanics. Say with Aeonis, you only unbury and you generate 2 pass you generate 4 pass tokens. You don't even care about what else you might do. With a Scion, you're just punching and you're, making things fast. You're still going to go home and look at the cards and be like, what? He has that ability too? There's so much deep stuff. Like, for example, I was thinking about some of my last games at Nova. So my typical turn 1 strategy with Aeonis is to generate the 4 pass tokens just so that I could see where my opponent is going to go, where they're going to be. And things like that, and then dropping the Nothing Beast in a certain location. Thinking back on certain games, it's like, oh, I didn't need to generate 4. What I needed to do was to generate 2 by unburying the Nothing Beast within 1 inch of Aeonis, him punching the Nothing Beast and giving him fast, because that's a thing he could do on his melee attack, and then reburying the Nothing Beast. I would only have gotten 2 pass tokens out of that, but I knew my opponent was only going to have 1 meaningful attack action, right? So there's a bunch of different types of crews. Some, especially in second, you saw this type of crew a lot where it would be like, this guy goes and buffs, this guy goes and buffs, this guy goes and buffs, this guy goes and pushes, and then this one guy goes crazy into your crew and alpha strikes you, right? If you're facing one of those crews, you don't need 4 pass tokens because they're doing something with those activations anyway. If you have 2 and a fast nothing beast, that's better value, right? So there's a lot of little bitty interactions that it just take a while to get your head around. One thing that I didn't get at first that I really started to get later was optimal Karina play. So at first, you look at Karina, she's 5 cost. You're like, why? She's just 4 health, 4 defense, 4 willpower. And I know you usually talk about lore in these things. Karina, like in the lore, is actually sort of Terra's secondhand sort of summoner. I think in like the first edition, she's the summoner and summons Terra. Terra's kind of the Beric Dondarrion of Malifaux, right? Every time she dies.
Nice reference, Cody.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Karina brings her back to life, every time she dies, except for she's way more emo and or something. But optimal Karina play really took me a while because she's super important. You don't see it at first. You're just like, oh, this is just a heal and a bad gun. But if Aonis gets run down, if Terra gets run down, if stuff hits the fan, you got to have Karina both healing and you got to have a 7 and a discard in your hand so that you can get something out of buried so that it can have an activation. Otherwise, it's just going to sit buried the entire turn because you've already went with nothing beast or Aonis to generate your pass tokens.
How about you, Owen? What are some of the locks that you've cracked?
So for me, a lot of it comes down to both the order of operations and then knowing the correct amount to push forward. So like how aggressive to be. Because there's definitely been a lot of games where I got Terra just murdered by the enemy crew because I too aggressively moved her up the board with those teleports to try to go after some schemes. And then she was out of position, not in the Karina stay alive aura, and not in range for the emergency berry. So unless it's going to win you the game, I think it's important to try to keep her at least within emergency berry range of an unactivated Void Wretch. So you have the option if you need it. And then just be careful in general with your key pieces that you don't accidentally expose them to enemy attacks, especially if you're burying your own models. You could accidentally bury a model and then suddenly open a charge lane to Karina or a backfield model.
So it sounds to me, Owen, like it's really critical it's critical in any game with any crew, but it sounds extra critical because of the amount of flexibility of positioning that you have in Tara, that keeping track of the threats on the other side of the board is key.
Absolutely.
I want to add one other thing, and I'll try to say it slower this time because I realized that last little spiel was very fast. So with your bonus action where you're making things fast, obviously you mess that up. Like the first 5 games, you're going to mess that up a few times. You're going to give something fast and then they're going to activate and you're like, oh, I just gave you.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that. Messed up. And the other thing that's also super confusing when you look at Terra's crew first, and I've seen everyone who has like a initial reaction to what Terra does, they're like, oh, well, you give things fast and then you punch them more better, right? Because a lot of your stuff gets plus flips against things that are fast. But in actuality, once you play Terra a few more times, you realize you don't really want to be punching the thing you're giving fast. The reason that is because if you punch it, you get the glimpse trigger, and then the fast model might go be buried.
Yeah. And
instead of you being able to unbury base to base with that fast model, it's now buried. So not only did your fast, you're not able to take the fast off the model, now you don't get to unbury. And they're going to activate, and that fast might have just mitigated all of the things you were getting out of repositioning them. Yeah. If they can just take that fast AP, walk back to where they were, and then charge you.
The counterpoint to that is models with serene countenance. So
sure.
And masters. So in that game versus Molly, Molly doesn't benefit from fast because she's a master. And B, if you can get fast on her, then all of your other attacks from more meaningful models can just ignore that negative. One other trap I would mention for new players and for those facing Terra to exploit if people try to do it is it's entirely possible to get too cute with the Nothing Beast, Accelerate Time, and Aeonis buffering abilities. So the Accelerate Time is the pulse out fast to a whole bunch of models. And the Aeonis buffering ability is when an enemy model within line of sight with fast would activate, you may discard a pass token to pass for them. It sounds really cool. And you're like, oh, awesome. I can have basically an insight and I can do lots of crazy stuff. But if you try to like set up that Rube Goldberg machine 9 times out of 10, it's not really going to do anything and it's just going to get your guys killed. So take it if it's there, but don't really plan on that.
And I think that's true of almost every time. I mean, you start thinking, well, if I can do A, B, C, and D, I mean, it's going to be devastating. The problem is that probably by the time you get to D, because those are alternating activations, your opponent's, smelled it, and you may not even have the cards for it. So it's one of I like that there are combos in Malifaux, but they aren't the game. So I think that's really good advice. So Owen, let's roll into kind of counters. So what are things that scare you when you have Tar on the board?
So as we mentioned before, anything that attacks buried models, and then anything that attacks incorporeal models. So things that ignore irreducible damage or ignore incorporeal, and then things that can deal incidental damage to get around that incorporeal. So auras or things like blasts off of things or just damage that happens outside of the context of an attack action. All of those things can be really bad for taking down your incorporeal models a lot faster than you expect. And then just if you're able to roll in with a model like Archie and just snipe out a model like Aeonis or Terra, you can really mess up the whole plan of how the shell game works.
How about you, Cody?
Yeah, I would say, so I'll start big and then get micro. Start macro, get micro. The way you beat Terra is you kill Terra or Aeonis. Like I said before, if both of those are live at turn 5, my ability to score end of game schemes and strats is just, it's incredible. Now that's easier said than done, right? Because if I'm playing Aeonis properly, if Aeonis is essential for me to win the game, I should be protecting him well, same as Terra. So if you are going to do that Alpha Strike strategy we talked about, where you buff, and then you send big Yasunori across the map, and he goes and he punches Aeonis 1.5 times or 2 times, whatever, then I'm just going to, you got to have the cards to also prevent him from getting buried next turn, because I can punch him, 2 to 7, a bunch of times and force you to take that target 14 willpower door, be buried. And if you fail it, you're going to go right back to start. So you can do that every single turn, and that's not a winning strategy, is spending your entire crew running across sending one model across the board. So you really have to be able to pressure the point scoring engine, which is Terra, Aeonis, and summons, without overcommitting or undercommitting, which is a hard sell, right?
That's not really helpful, Cody. What do you mean?
You can't overcommit. You can't send a bunch in there, but you can't undercommit because you have to interact, right? You can't.
Okay.
You can't just let me scheme and just summon all day, right? Because you're just going to get bogged down in void wretches while I'm scoring all my points and you're scoring nothing. So some of the easiest way to do that is any crew where the entire crew is fast. And I'll say some of my hardest games, and that'll give you some ideas of things that have really troubled me, which has been Molly, Yoko, the Vix, and Zip. So all of these crews are very fast for the most part, or can at least pressure certain parts of the board, or they do things that make my stuff harder.
Mm-hmm.
So concealment and negatives, anything that does those two things makes her entire crew inefficient. Like the Nothing Beast, I cannot score Assassinate against a Serene Countenance Master. Like, it's very hard. I have to spend them. I either have to get Tara in there, and she's spending a stone to stick her bonus action, so I'm going to have to spend a high card on it so that I can then have Ionis unbury the Nothing Beast. He walk charges, and now he's on straight flip, so that I can punch you once. Like, it's not a great strategy. So anything that's making you inefficient that way, and we didn't mention it before, but the stutter time action is an attack action. Even though it's a bonus action and can target friendlies, it has all the problems of attack actions, even if you're targeting a friendly. So if I'm trying to bury Tara, like say I go with Tara, I leap and then I walk charge, and I'm way deep in your crew, I cannot reliably bury her unless I can get a model with focus up there if she's in like a concealment aura. So if I walk into Zip and Tara is in Zip's concealment aura, it's also making it harder for me to bury my own Tara because that action is an attack action.
Yeah.
So any of those auras that are negatives and concealments make it really hard for her.
You guys talked about the card pressure too, right? So anything that's forcing you to discard, anything that's maybe terrifying, stuff like that, are those problems?
Yeah, I really don't like Yoko because it pressures her hand. Like I said, she has maybe one card to spare. If I play against Yoko, I have 0 cards to spare, and I'm probably still stoning for the card I need to summon. I actually like playing against Zoraida because she like gives me more cards with her bonus action to let us both discard a card and draw our hands.
All right. So, and I appreciate it, guys. I think that was some good advice on how to counter her. I'm right now not convinced that's going to give me a whole lot of options. I have struggled against her, and I don't think I'm alone. I think probably the best counter to Tara is going up against a player who hasn't put the reps in with her. Because I think you both guys did a great job of explaining that, she's not easy, but she's worth the work and worth getting the reps in. So Owen, if people want to reach out, or is there any plugs or anything that you'd like to give?
So best way to reach out to me is to hit me up on a Weird Place on Facebook. I'm pretty active there and in the Capital Malifaux Facebook group. So if you're in the DC area, come on out. I host weekly game nights, so I'll put a plug for that. No other events scheduled at the moment, but I think a number of us are actually going to be coming down to Craig's event in December. So I'll put in a plug for your stuff.
Yeah, that's mid-December, and it's actually Jesse's event. But it's going to be kind of our mid-season for the Carolinas Conference. It's going to be a grand tournament, and I'm really happy to hear you say, Owen, that you're going to bring your crew down for that. We're only going to allow 32 players. I anticipate it's going to sell out. So go to atomicempire.com and make sure you buy your tickets before it does, and I'll put links into the show notes. So I appreciate that, Owen.
You're welcome.
How about you, Cody?
You can find me on Facebook. I'm on a Weird Place and stuff too. I'm more likely to respond on Instagram, I guess. My Instagram is ofishcody, all one word. I post a bunch of pictures on there as I paint. I'm not as talented as Craig, but I'm very prolific.
Yeah. So, all right. So people have been giving me crap about saying I'm a bad player, right? And everybody knows that I got lucky at Nova and I'm a bad player. But you trying to pretend that you're not a good painter is unacceptable. So I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some of Cody's work. Not only is Cody a very, very good painter, but I consider what I love the most is Cody puts so much thought into his crews. So like, I'll just paint shit, right? And people, some people like it, some people don't. Like Cody, you like every crew is like a doctorate. Like thematically, and you get tiny freaking furniture, and there's a story if you put these two models together, and it's a different story if you put those two models together. Don't undersell yourself, Cody. And I'm gonna put some fresh pictures on the website and link them in the notes, because if you haven't seen Cody's Tara crew, it's really one of the best put together crews I've ever seen. His Parker crew we featured on Third Floor Wars already. So I appreciate you being humble, Cody. You're very, very good at what you do, man.
Macing's the funnest part. Painting's boring.
Yeah, that can be very true. All right, guys. It's not going to be the last time either of you are on the show. I appreciate you making the time. For those of you out there, if you've got Tara, get her on the table, start playing. I think if one of the big takeaways that we've had in this episode is that it's just going to take a little bit of time, but boy, oh boy, how cool does she sound? And we know she's competitive. I think that Cody's already proven that as well. So thanks for listening, everybody, and have a good night. Be sure to check out our shop on thirdfloorwars.com for the latest gaming apparel and gear. While you're there, check out how the USFO Tour is shaping up. How does your conference compare to the others in the United States? Where do you rank nationally? Get those models built, painted, and on the table so we can see you at the US Masters Invitational in October of 2020. Also, rate and write a review on this podcast for us. It really helps us find people almost as cool as you are. Thanks for listening. Howdy, friend. Craig here. Is this episode making you realize you need to buy some models? Gadzooks Gaming is my favorite online retailer because of their large selection, killer prices, and great customer service. Don't you hate buying an entire crew box when you only need one model? Gadzooks sells crew box models individually and saves you a ton of money. They even have free shipping to the US and Canada if you spend $100 or more. Swing by gadzooksgaming.com and make sure you tell them Craig from the Third Floor sent you. All the details are in the show notes.